Welcome to the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce Lunch and Learn webinar series. Today's topic, Business Basics, is brought to you with the support of our sponsor, the University of Fredericton. My name is Krista Ross. I'm the CEO of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce, and today our presenter is Mike Mazeral of Ignite Fredericton. Mike has more than 15 years experience in working with a wide variety of entrepreneurs in various supporting roles, ranging from assisting youth who are interested in starting a business to commercial lending. To his current role, he's the business startup specialist for Ignite Fredericton. He's an energetic leader, he motivates, and he's responsible for fueling entrepreneurs for economic growth. He offers free confidential business counseling and business planning tools to help entrepreneurs develop their business plans and navigate through the maze of funding programs and services that are available to assist them. He really works hands-on with these individuals. He supports them to help start, grow, and locate their businesses in the Fredericton region. Mike has a wide variety of expertise, including business startup, business expansion, finance, funding, and business planning. He's been submersed in the startup scene, participating on several boards and task forces related to businesses in the region. Having a passion for helping people move their business from an idea through validation stages right to mature businesses, Mike prides himself on offering sound advice, and he really enjoys watching entrepreneurs succeed. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mike. I am going to pass the speaker to him.
Thank you very much, Krista. Thank you for everyone attending today. Our presentation goes through the basics of doing business, I guess, in the Fredericton area. A lot of the questions that we get, we summarized into a simple presentation to kind of get people on a common ground, so they're ready to speak to a business development officer at Ignite Fredericton about starting their business. So quickly, I'll talk a little bit about Ignite Fredericton and what we do. So Ignite Fredericton's mission is fueling entrepreneurs for economic growth, which we're supporting the vision to be the startup capital of Canada, which we accomplished last year in 2016. We support entrepreneurs to help them grow, start, and locate their businesses to the Fredericton region. We attract and retain talent through immigration efforts, and we strengthen the economic development ecosystem through strategic partnerships and initiatives. So our areas of expertise within Ignite Fredericton, we work with a wide variety of clients ranging from startup right into growth and maturity, and even into succession planning and looking at selling their businesses or getting out of the businesses that they've operated for a period of time. So really the areas of expertise is broad. We work with clients on productivity, business plans, marketing, mentoring, human resources, real estate, business startup, business expansion, access to capital, trade and export, and finance. And we're not limited to these areas. We broaden our reach if we need to for the clients that we're working with. So our roadmap for the session, basically one of the top questions that I get is a lot of people will come in saying, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to start a business, I just don't know what I want to do. So we're going to look at ways to find some business opportunities if you don't already have one. We're going to look at the importance of the business plan. So a lot of people will create the business plan to access funding, which is true, but there is a broader reasoning why you should have the business plan. We'll briefly talk about choosing a location, choosing names for your businesses. There are things to consider while doing this. We'll look at some operational requirements and how to find out what these requirements are. We'll talk about some programming or funding options that are out there, and then we'll give you some tools to use for further training and resources. So how to find business opportunities. As an entrepreneur, you typically have the option to either buy an existing business, open a franchise, or start a new business from scratch. Depending upon the stage that you're in or the mindset that you have, any one of those may be applicable. So when buying an existing business, often if we drive around the region or anywhere for that matter, we'll see houses for sale, but we don't always see businesses for sale. We don't publicly display these businesses that are typically for sale. However, there are a lot that are. So ways to go about finding businesses that are for sale or ways to look at buying an existing business. You can first contact a business or commercial broker. So there are brokers like real estate agents in the area who sell businesses for as their jobs. They'll have a listing of some businesses that they may or may not make public, but they can work with you in finding the business that you're interested in. Contacting business owners in the industry for which you are interested is an easier way too. So if you know of a certain industry or a sector that you want to be an entrepreneur for and you're interested in buying a business, sometimes just going right to those businesses and talking to them about what their plans for succession are, or maybe a partnership or whatnot. Asking people in your network and letting them know that you're looking or interested in buying a business is another great way. Just like the business owners don't necessarily publicly list their buildings or businesses for sale, entrepreneurs who are interested in buying a business don't always tell people either that they are interested. So no one's working together to find these businesses or to let people know that they are selling. So let people in the network know and ask them, if they know of people who are selling or potentially could be selling. Lastly, sometimes accountants and lawyers who work with businesses on an ongoing basis will know of some businesses that are for sale or maybe coming up for sale. So talking to some accountants or lawyers may help with those efforts as well. Opening a franchise. So starting a franchise, or starting a business rather from scratch, can be sometimes overwhelming or complicated for first-time entrepreneurs especially. So that's why investing in an already successful franchise may be a good solution for your business venture. But there are things to consider. There are pros and cons to opening or starting a franchise. Advantages to having a franchise: first and foremost, you don't have to come up with the idea. So these entrepreneurs that are coming in saying, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to have a startup, but I just don't know what I want to do. Sometimes looking at options through franchising is an easy option for them. So you don't have to come up with the idea for the new business. You get assistance with the business startup, whether it be equipment, suppliers, training, the list goes on and on, depending upon the agreement that you have with the franchisor. You can sometimes buy your supplies in bulk if it's applicable to the type of business you're in. So if you're buying a certain item, you can share it with other franchisors or franchisees rather in the area to buy it at a better price point. Your business benefits from brand recognition. So like most franchises, people already know a little bit about. So your customers are already in line, and that's our last bullet point, saying that the supply chain of customers are already in place because of this. Some of the disadvantages to having a franchise. Franchises are all run the same way. So you have very little flexibility or say in how the business operations run. Generally, the more successful the franchise is, the more expensive it is to buy, and also the criteria that you have to follow is a little bit tighter. There are ongoing costs such as royalties and advertising that you'll have to pay. So you'll pay an upfront franchise fee, but then after that you may have to pay royalties on a quarterly, semi-annual, or annual basis. And those are ongoing, and they can be dependent upon either sales, revenue, or a number of things. And lastly, there's not a lot of legal protection available for the franchisees. So you would be the franchisee if you're buying into a franchise, and the owner of the franchise would be the franchisor. Because these franchises are successful, and there's usually a lot of thought process that have gone through, the franchisor are taking the steps to legally protect themselves and the franchise so that they can sell it to other entrepreneurs. And lastly, and probably the most common that we see people come through, is starting their own business. So people already have an idea, and they're walking through the door, and they just don't know where to go. So when you're starting your own business, the first thing you have to do is obviously have the idea. And this really should be a circle. It should keep going. But within that idea, you want to explore the opportunities that you have. So sometimes the most obvious opportunities aren't the only opportunities. You want to explore what potential other avenues you can take to have opportunity with the idea. You want to discuss your idea with others, so get their honest feedback on it. You know, if you're sincere about doing this, you want to make sure that you have a market, and the only way to do this is to start talking to people about the idea that you have and determining whether or not there is a market for it and people will use it. Stating your idea, so being able to talk about what your business is and what you do. It sounds rather simple to do, however, a lot of thought process has to go into it to really get your elevator pitch to, you know, a 30-second a pitch to bring people, to let them know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why they should use your service or product. And then lastly, assess your market again. So look at your market and make sure that you're solving the problem that they have. And when you're doing that, you want to, again, look at the other opportunities. So that's why I say it should be a circle, this slide. And then when you explore the opportunities that your market has, you may have other opportunities that you can go through. So moving right along into business planning. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, most people will create a business plan for the simple fact that they need to get financing or they need to get funding or access a program, which is true. You do need it. However, there are things you should consider before going for this funding. And the main reason of creating the business plan is to prove to yourself that the business is going to be successful. You want to avoid bad surprises before they come. So the main components to the business plan, and I could have a full 3-hour presentation on business planning and different tools that you can use to business plan. But the traditional business plans, we typically see an executive summary, which basically summarizes the whole plan. It's the first thing the reader will read. It should be the last thing that you write because it is a summary of your plan. Next, you'll have your business description, just simply doing that, describing the business that you're doing. Your marketing plan can be a separate plan completely, but usually it is included in the business plan as well. You'll want to talk about your management, and in brackets I have team here. So your management, you may be a sole proprietor and not have a huge team around you working day to day with you, but you may have team members that are on the outside that people typically wouldn't see. This could be mentors, accountants, lawyers, various people who help to make sure that your business is going to run successfully. The reason why you want to include these in the business plan is because you're showing the reader that you have taken the steps to ensure that your plan will be successful. You'll want to talk about your operational requirements, so what you're required to do by law and by region, whether it's through permits or licenses, and so on. And lastly, your final projections. So this is one of the harder parts, I guess, for people who are business planning, because it is a projection. It's a bit of a guess looking into the future. You'll want to try to make the most educated, best guess you can. So it would probably be one of the second last things that you'll work on before the executive summary, once you've had a chance to go through and really get to know your market. So importance of a business plan. First and foremost, you're going to avoid bad surprises. So taking the time to go through the business planning cycle, you know, you can really avoid bad surprises before they happen, or at least have contingency plans to surprises that may happen. It'll reduce stress because you've taken time to think things through before jumping right in. It'll help you achieve success because you're planning out for the future. You're creating financial plans to say, here's where I should be. As you're going through your business journey, you should look back at your plan and say, okay, well, here's where I plan to be in 6 months, and here's where I actually am. What am I doing that's working, and what am I doing that's not? And you can make those changes at an earlier stage rather than later when it's too late. And lastly, it's your security. It's the one document that you have taken pride into to prove to yourself and to other individuals that the business will be successful, and that you've taken the steps to ensure that any mishaps or bad surprises that may come, you have contingency plans too. Choosing a location. So oftentimes people will laugh and they'll say, well, I don't need help choosing a location. I can find this on my own. And that's very true, but there are things to consider when choosing the location. So first and foremost, you want to think about your customers. If you're operating a retail shop and foot traffic's a big component to you, then obviously you want to be in a place where your customers can get to you all the time. You may need to look at parking and accessibility into your outlet. But then on the flip side, with that, there is a cost to having these kinds of locations. If your customers are online or you're offering a service to people and they don't necessarily need to come to you, you may not need to be in these prime locations. You could be in a more remote location and work that way. The reason why we talk about that is because people sometimes will spend a little bit more money than they have to, or not enough money to keep the business operating. Zoning, so development, whether you're building or purchasing a space or releasing a space to operate your business, you want to ensure that the zoning is allowing you to operate the business in that regard. And really, it's a quick phone call to City Hall within the city limits to ensure that the area is zoned properly for the business, and they can help you with that. Obviously, you want to consider rental rates and compare them to various regions, or various areas rather, to ensure that you're getting the maximum return on your investment in your property. We talked briefly about parking and accessibility. Obviously, if you need parking or if you need to have accessibility for certain clients or customers, then you want to ensure that you do that. And lastly, we talk about signage. There are some bylaws in the Fredericton region around signage, so we want to ensure that before you go out and purchase signs, you want to make sure that you can have that sign, and if there are permits required for it, that you do that. So again, it's a simple telephone call to City Hall to ensure that you're following the plans that they had. So selecting a business name. Again, this one sounds kind of silly. However, we have seen some people who have made some mistakes in the past when choosing a business name and wish they could go back and look at them. Things to consider when you're selecting your business name. You want to have it memorable but easy to spell. So you want people to be able to quickly jot it down and remember it and not forget it all the time. It doesn't need, but it can have a visual element. So, you look at brands like Nike, if you see the swoosh or the check mark, you know exactly what it is when you see it without having to read anything. Positive connotation or colors. So you want to ensure that, if you're running a daycare, that you don't have black and white colors with crossbars and skulls in the image to attract your customers. You can include information about what your business does. So for instance, Ignite Fredericton, if we just called ourselves Ignite Fredericton and didn't have a tagline, then people would kind of wonder what exactly we did. But we do put that tagline in, Ignite Fredericton, fueling entrepreneurs. Oh, okay, they work with entrepreneurs. And lastly, try to keep your name fairly short. So some businesses will have generally longer names and they can get forgotten, or people just don't know how to pronounce them properly, and when referring businesses or customers to you, it may get lost in translation. Registering a business. This is a common question that we get. People often think it's a very complicated process to go through. It's not overly complicated. First and foremost, what you'll want to do is complete a name search report to ensure that the name that you've chosen for your business is available and no one else is using it. Once you have this, you register with Corporate Affairs, so at Service New Brunswick. You provide them the name search report, the legal structure that you'll choose, and we'll talk about legal structures in a moment, and then you pay your fees, and your fees can range depending upon the legal structure that you've chosen. And once you've completed this, they'll file everything. You'll get your business number, and you're registered, and you're ready to operate. So business structures. There are a few different business structures. The typical ones that we see are sole proprietorships, partnerships, and incorporations. So there are others, there are nonprofits, there are cooperatives and whatnot. We don't see as many of those come through our doors, but we certainly can assist with them if they do. We'll talk about the three common ones that we typically see in this presentation. So sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship is one person. So one person operates the business under their name, and they are the business. So that person is the business in name and in body. some of the advantages to having a sole proprietorship is they're very easy to start up, or to set up rather. As I mentioned earlier, you simply complete the name search, you file it through Service New Brunswick, and you're pretty much ready to go. There's relatively low startup cost in sole proprietorships. You can really determine how much you want to invest to start the business, or how much you want to grow. There's one decision maker, which can be very important if some people would prefer to make all the decisions and not have to talk to anyone else about possible decisions within the business. There's minimal working capital required, so you can determine how much you want to use as capital to start the business. There are some tax advantages to the owner. Whenever we talk about tax advantages or tax disadvantages, we try not to get too deep. Most of these questions should be directed to an accountant or bookkeeper to ensure that you're getting the proper information. And then lastly, the biggest advantage is all profits go to the owner. So any money that the sole proprietor makes, the owner makes. Some of the disadvantages, first and foremost, is unlimited liability. So when I say unlimited liability, it means that you are liable to an unlimited amount for all the work the business does. So if you're a carpenter and you put a roof on a house and the house leaks, they're coming to you and they could sue or do whatever. Of course, I use this as an easy example. You would have insurance and whatnot to cover, but you get the idea of where the liability would go. It would go to you personally. There's lack of continuity and absence of owner. So if you're that carpenter, again, you know, and something should happen, you break an arm or a leg and you're out of work for a while, how does the business continue? How does it operate? And how does the work and projects get done in a timely manner? It can be difficult to raise capital. So you're applying for credit or you're applying for loans on a personal basis. Most people have their own personal debt loads to look at as well, and these have to be taken into account when looking at others. So if you're maxed out personally, you're going to be maxed out for your business as well. Income is taxed at the personal rate versus the corporate tax rate. So that can be a disadvantage. The corporate tax rate is quite a little lower than the personal tax rate. Partnerships. So a partnership is basically the exact same as a sole proprietorship. However, there's two or more people involved in the organization or the business. The advantages, again, they're very easy to start up or form, relatively low startup cost. One of the unique advantages here would be additional sources of investment capital. So if I have two or more people contributing investment capital to get the business started, then obviously the pool of money to get started is going to be a little bit higher than as a sole proprietor, and I only had my own resources. There are possible tax advantages again. There's limited regulation, so you're regulated as people, as individuals, and so you don't have to file for your corporation taxes or anything. There's a broader management base, so if you have two or more people to help make decisions within the business, and you're sharing the risks. So some of the risks that are involved in any startup are shared amongst the owners of the business. Some of the disadvantages, again, there's an unlimited liability disadvantage. So, you know, all partners are unlimitedly liable for the reputation, the work, and everything that happens within the business. There's a lack of continuity. Again, it is mitigated here if you have two or more people involved, because there are other people to help pick up the slack if someone should get hurt or be out of work for a while. Shared decision making. Well, we just said that could be an advantage, but it could be a disadvantage too if all partners are not on the same wavelength or making the same kind of decisions, or see the business going in a different direction. Difficulty raising additional capital. It is mitigated again because there are more people involved, so you have more access to funding to personally, I guess, to inject into the business. Hard to find suitable partners. So, you know, trying to find that person that you'll be able to work with on an ongoing basis. It's in most cases, if not as much, you're seeing that person more than your spouse in a lot of cases. So it's your business spouse that you're going to be working with, and you want to ensure that it is someone that you can work with on an ongoing basis. And then risk of conflict between partners. So you want to ensure that you're able to work with the people, but you also want to look at things like partnership agreements and whatnot that you can draw up to help maintain the relationship that you had before you went into business together, so that you remain partners or friends after the business as well, if need be. And lastly, incorporating or corporations. So when you incorporate a company, you create a legal entity for that company. You own that legal entity personally, but the company is a legal thing, or a legal. It's noticed by the courts and by taxes as an individual, not an individual, but a legal entity. Some of the advantages to this is there's a limited liability of shareholders. So you'll remember in the first two, the sole proprietor partnerships, we talked about disadvantages being unlimited liability. So now it's an advantage because things are limited to the business itself. So if that same carpenter went out and should put a roof on and it leaks, the homeowner then is suing the company or the corporation as opposed to the owner of the business personally. Of course, the owner still represents the corporation. However, legally, they're suing the corporation or the business. Ownership is transferable, so you can sell shares, some or all, to keep the business around. For this reason, there's a continuous existence of the business. So the business can last well after the original owner should live, based upon the success of the business and the shareholders that participate. We talked already about the separate legal entity. So it is a legal entity. The business itself is taxed on the revenues that it makes, and you are taxed on the income that you make from the business. There's possible tax advantages. Again, when we talk about taxes, we like to reference either a bookkeeper or an accountant to ensure that everyone's getting the proper information, depending upon the situation that they're in within the business. It can be easier to raise capital. As startups, it's never always easy to raise capital at the beginning. But again, here now you're applying for credit, or you're applying for loans through the business name. They're of course going to look at you personally as well, but they're looking at the ability to repay the debt through the business, so ensuring that the operating expenses and whatnot can be covered, along with the new additional debt that will be brought on. You can hire specialized management to help with operating the business. And lastly, increase business with some question marks. So in some cases, people will view an incorporated company as more reliable to deal with. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but some people get that perception right away, so it can lead to increased business. The disadvantages, first and foremost, you must adhere to more regulation. It's not really a disadvantage, there's just a little bit more to do. As we mentioned earlier, it is a separate legal entity. So when you're filing your taxes, you would file for your company, and then you will file personally for yourself. So there's a little bit more regulation to take on. It does cost a bit more to incorporate, especially if you start taking in lawyers or whatnot that you may use to complete the incorporation process. There's extensive or more, I guess, record keeping necessary. So you have to keep track of your own personal records within the company, but then you also are responsible for all the records of the company itself and the other people that may work for it. There's double taxation of dividends that could be a possibility. Again, this is a question that you could bring to an accountant or a bookkeeper. But basically what this means is if you're taking a salary from your company of, let's say, $50,000, you're taxed on that $50,000 personally. If the company made $100,000 that year, the company's taxed on the $100,000 that it made that year. But then if you wanted to take that $100,000 and draw it out, it could potentially be taxed again as a dividend. So you'll want to work with your accountants or your bookkeepers to ensure that you're doing everything legal, but in the way that's going to benefit you the most. And then, of course, there's the possible development of conflict between shareholders and executives. So you want to try to ensure that all shareholders and executives on your team are going to be there to do the right thing for your company, and then also are people that you can work with on an ongoing basis. So how do you choose, which legal entity? It's really up to you. There's no right or wrong per se, but there are things to consider. First and foremost, the cost associated. You know, you may only want to start small, and starting as a sole proprietor may be the easiest, quickest way for you. And I should have mentioned earlier, you can start out as a sole proprietor or partnership and then move into an incorporated entity or incorporate the company at a later date. The only disadvantage to doing that is you'll have to pay the fees twice, I guess, or you'll have to pay the fee for the sole proprietorship and then again for the incorporated company. Other things to consider is your management control, so how much control you want to have over the business. If it's all, maybe you want to be a sole proprietor. If you want a little bit of assistance, then you may look at partnerships. Your liability is going to be a big one. You know, there are things to consider depending upon the type of business. Your vulnerability to legal risk, another thing to consider, and then your business goals. Maybe for some people, it may be a goal to incorporate or to grow to a size where you need to. For others, it may not matter. So those are just things to consider. When you do make these decisions, I highly recommend talking to either a bookkeeper, accountant, or a lawyer to ensure that you're covering all your bases before you make that decision. Taxation. So once you incorporate your company, you'll get your business number, incorporate or register, you'll get your business number. This business number is really like your social insurance number for your business. So you'll use this to file your corporate income taxes. It's going to be your import or export number for all your payroll through Canada Pension, employment insurance, income taxes, and HST. There is a bullet here talking about revenues exceeding $30,000 in any 4 consecutive quarters for HST. This is true. However, again, as I mentioned earlier, with taxation questions, you should address with an accountant to make sure that you're covering yourself, I guess, because if you are under the $30,000 in any 4 consecutive quarters, technically you don't have to pay HST. But it's good to talk to an accountant to make sure that you're considering all the variables in place. So taxation tips, we always tell people to keep track of all their records, and for the most part they do. However, you see the image on the screen here of the shoebox with all the receipts in it. This is sometimes how people will come to their accountant or bookkeeper. I don't recommend it. You want to try to keep everything in order so that you can get at things a lot quicker. A lot of people now are using USB sticks to keep everything sorted by month or week or quarter. So you want to try to keep things as neat and tidy as you possibly can in the event that you ever need to go back and get anything for either your bookkeeper, your accountant, or for Canadian Revenue Agency. You want to keep track of all contact you have had with the CRA or Canada Revenue Agency, if it's applicable. So if you're talking to someone, document the time that you talked to them, who you talked to, and what the outcome of the conversation was. Use some of the online resources or guides through the Canada Revenue website. It is a good website for users to use to find information out in working in conjunction with an accountant or bookkeeper. And then try to meet all your deadlines. So if you do have taxes that you have to pay, try to meet those deadlines, or at least be in contact with the individuals that you need to let them know when you'll be able to make payments. So operational requirements. Our next slide, we talk a bit about how to find what operational requirements you may or may not have. But one topic we usually let people know is if you have 3 or more employees working in your business, whether they be part-time or full-time and they're on the payroll, and that's including you as the owner or owners, you must register with WorkSafe New Brunswick. So if you're going to have 3 or more people, including yourself, just make sure you contact WorkSafe New Brunswick so that you're following the guidelines that they have stipulated. As far as other operational requirements or things to think about, there are licenses, permits, and registrations that can sometimes come up. The best tool to use to find what licenses, permits, or registration that I've seen is the BizPal website, so www.bizpal.ca. Basically, it's a very user-friendly website. You basically choose the province which your business is going to operate in, the area, within that province, and then the sector of work that you're going to do. And then the website will populate all possible permits, licenses, or registrations that you may or may not need. You can then go through each of the identified topics, read through it, make sure that it applies to you. You can add it to your briefcase, if you will, on the website, and review it again at the end. And these will give you the links to any of the government sites or wherever the license, permit, or registration is, what the cost is, who you have to talk to, and how you go about applying for them. You also want to consider your government regulations within the sector that you're in, if it's applicable, the qualifications that you may or may not need. So, you want to make sure that you're qualified to do the work, or you have people that are qualified to complete the work for you. You want to look at your insurances. Don't assume that your home or personal insurance will cover your business, because it probably won't. So you'll want to talk to a few insurance companies to ensure that you're adequately covered and the business is protected. And then lastly, environmental issues. So if you're working with or purchasing land or leasing land in a place where there may be potential environmental issues in the past, you'll have to complete some assessments and whatnot. So programming. Some of the programs are loan-based products that are out there. There are a few. And really, there's no real cookie cutter for all businesses to use. Depending upon the type of business, the stage of business, and the sector that they're in, there could be certain programs that would be applicable or not applicable. But some of the main common programs that we see, first and foremost, we have the impact loan that we administer at Ignite Fredericton, which is a loan up to $20,000 for startup or expansion. It's a personal loan made out to the entrepreneur to inject into the business. The Futurepreneur loan is another startup or growth loan offered through Futurepreneur Canada, and we actually administer some of those applications through the Ignite offices as well. Opportunities New Brunswick can offer programs to help various stage companies, whether they be startup or into growth, depending upon the type of businesses they are and what they are looking to do. So if you're in a growth stage and you're looking at export markets, there may be things they can help with. If you're hiring a lot of new employees and you want some help with that, they may be able to help. Self-employment benefit program. So if you are on or have been on unemployment insurance in the last few years, there may be a program to help you get off of unemployment insurance and start your own business. Again, this is very specific to the individual at this point. There's workforce expansion programs. So if you're creating jobs, there may be programs to help offset some wages for a period of time, or help you in finding the people that you need to complete the resources that need finished. There's a small business loan guarantee program offered by the federal government, which basically guarantees a portion or all of the loan to a bank or financial institution. Seed student entrepreneur loans, which are smaller base loans for students who are looking to create employment opportunities for themselves through the summer months. And then lots of other sector-specific programs or loans that may be available. What I'd recommend doing is, if you're looking at programs or loans, contact our office or myself, and I do have a slide at the end of the presentation with my contact information to sit down and we can talk a little bit more about your business and determine what the best steps, I guess, would be for you to follow through to get to access the program or loan-based products that are out there. So resources. Our website, the ignitefredericton.ca website, has a lot of resources and links to help you no matter what stage your business is in, whether you're starting or growing your business or looking to locate a business to the area, or you yourself are looking to locate. So I highly recommend going on the www.ignitefredericton.ca website to access some of the resources that are available there. Other resources that I've typically used a lot are the Canada Business Network. So Canada Business Network offers free service providing free business plan samples, market research, info and how-to guides for entrepreneurs at various stages of their entrepreneurial journey. So the two main things that I've seen entrepreneurs use them for the free sample business plan. So it gives you a sample business plan to use that's completed in the sector that you're looking for. kind of use as a guide or a base to create your own plan. And then market research. So you can contact the Canada Business Network through their Contact Us section on their webpage, and basically ask them any questions that you would like to know market research on. So if you're looking for demographics, for instance, in the Fredericton region, you can contact them and say, hey, I'd like to have some demographics in the Fredericton region, and they'll send you a bunch of information. Or you can get very specific and ask for more specific information, and they'll be more specific with their response. So you may say, I'm looking for demographics on men and women aged 19 to 35 within a 2-kilometer radius of this address, and then they can send you some information about that. So there are some free and confidential resources out there through the Canada Business Network that that can help you, especially during your business planning time. Lastly, the top 10 tips for starting a business. So top 10 tips that we typically tell people: first, do all your research you possibly can before jumping in. We'd rather see you spend the time and effort into researching the business and starting it when you know it'll be when you know things will go well, than to jumping right in and having issues arise that you may not have planned for. Explore all the funding or program options that are out there to help you, and those are things that we can help with at Ignite Fredericton as well. Take time to complete a business plan or work on a lean canvas to ensure that that you know what you're getting into, and that your plan will get off to the right on the right foot, and you'll have a bit of a guide, I guess, to help you ensure that the business will be successful. Think of your customers and think of your competition, your competitors. So think of your customers, what they want and what they expect, but think of your competitors and think about what they're doing that is working, and maybe some places where they're not doing as well or not doing a good of a job that you may be able to fill a void and gain more customers. Think of your value proposition. So your value proposition is that thing that grabs your customers and makes them want to deal with you, makes them want to use your service or your product. Think of your team, the team that you have around you working with you, and also the team that you have around you helping to ensure that your business is successful. Those could be, as I said earlier, accountants or lawyers, mentors, various people in the business world that are there to assist you and make sure that you're on the right track. Network yourself and network your business. So get out and tell people what you're doing. Use the various networking opportunities that we have in the Fredericton region, like the Business After Hours programs that the Chamber of Commerce put on, to get your business name out there and to let people know what you're doing. The only way you're going to gain customers is if they know what you're doing and that you are out there offering the service or product. Be resilient, especially at the beginning stages, because you're going to be told no a lot. But you have to be able to pick yourself up and move on to find the yeses out there, especially when you're doing your market research and trying to find what customers you have or you potentially could have. And lastly, enjoy the ride. So have fun doing it. People can go out and get a job. You're choosing to start a business because it's something that you're passionate about, so you should have fun in doing it too. With that, I don't see any questions in the chat, which is fine. But if there are questions that should arise, my contact information is on the screen. My direct phone line and email are there in our offices. So I want to thank Krista and Wendy at the Chamber of Commerce here in Fredericton for the time and allowing me to present today. And I'll pass it on back to Krista.
Mike, thank you so much for that presentation. It was very informative, and we really appreciate that. And just as a small thank you for your time and expertise, we're going to make a donation in your name to the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce Scholarship Fund. I'd also like to once again thank and acknowledge University of Fredericton for sponsoring our Lunch and Learn webinar series. We really appreciate their support. And one last point I want to mention is that this webinar, like all of our webinar series, will be on our website. Usually within a week of its presentation, we have it on our website, so people can go back and refer to it or share it on their social media with others they think would find it helpful. So thanks again, Mike. Thanks, University of Fredericton, and thanks very much for those who participated. Have a great day, everyone.